and welcome to what is episode 5 of Me, My CTO and I from CTO Academy. My name's Andrew Weaver, and I'm joined as ever by my wonderful co-host, Leicester City fan, and lovely group CTO, Sanjay Mistry. How are you, Sanjay?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm very good. Very, very sad with what's happened at Leicester. But hey, there's next season. We'll bounce back.
We can't go through that again. The poor audience had to suffer that in episode 4. Although Sanjay and I, but we are recording this at the end of a rather long working week for both of us, I think. So we were both bemoaning the fact that our colleagues have had to suffer having to work with us most of this week. But I tell you the other thing, Sanjay, the reason why I have got a more valid excuse than you for Friday afternoon lethargy, and that's the fact that I went last week, came back on Monday, from the Glastonbury music festival, although it's more than just music, but the Glastonbury Festival in Somerset, which is quite an extraordinary event. Have you ever been?
Never been. I think camping or glamping or no, definitely not doing it. I need my creature comforts.
I know, there are, dare I say, VIP options these days. But for those not aware of Glastonbury, so essentially a dairy farm in Somerset, which is about, I guess, 180 miles west of London, along the M4, Somerset, the county. There's a dairy farm there, which for 360 days of the year is literally that. That's what it does. But for 5 days of the year, it transforms into a city. I mean, literally, Sanjay, they reckon there's over 200,000 people now attend this festival every year. I mean, and it literally feels transformed into this incredible festival of primarily music, but there are a lot of other things. I think there's over 100 stages at this place.
Wow.
And the headliner this year was Elton John, which was an extraordinary, what I think his last concert ever in the UK. I'm not being an Elton John fan, and yet it was just magnificent. So I loved it, exhausting, and I came home, as I say, having a few days to recover. But I tell you what was interesting in the context of this show and the audience listening was I was quite interested in how little technology has intruded into this particular festival, which I've been going to now for on and off 30, 40 years. And I don't think there's a huge amount that's changed. Now, there's the obvious stuff. There's the buying of the tickets. Okay, that's all online, obviously. There's the app, which I didn't actually use very much because I'm a traditionalist. I like my little paper menu at the festival. And you pay for everything by phone, which is obviously brilliant, even more so than it even was probably 2 or 3 years ago. But that's about it. And it did strike me that there's a huge amount where technology can help. I mean, for example, the site is so enormous, right? Yeah. It would be nice to know the best route to get from A to B.
Yeah.
It would be nice to know which campsites are full.
Yeah. And I guess if you're trying to find friends or, like you said, navigate to a particular band and are they running late or are they running on time or whatever, I can see that.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, even strategizing. I mean, it's quite difficult to explain how complex this thing is, but there are literally 100 stages. So you go to the event and you map out who you'd like to see, and it's almost impossible to do it. Technology would be beautiful to just work out who's running slightly late, whether it's possible to get from this place to that place in the amount of time that you have allocated. But I tell you the other thing that the Glastonbury definitely needs to think about introducing is the smart wristbands. So I've actually got a pal, incidentally, who's in the company, but so you still are paying for everything independently. You're still paying for your burger and your beer, and it strikes me as slightly dated. It might be because it's such a huge enterprise that technology at the moment can't quite work there, but I can't imagine that's the case. But the ability just to run everything off your wristband, literally buying everything, entering every venue, it still isn't there, and it strikes me as quite outdated not to have that, don't you think?
Yeah, and I think also like trying to keep your phone charged or keeping your credit card on you, that seems like a level of stress that you don't want when you're trying to enjoy yourself. So yeah, I could really live with a wristband that doesn't need charging for the 5 days and I can tap away and not worry about it. Sounds like a good idea.
No, I think so. I'm going to have a word with my mate about that. But it sounds like the only way we'll get you there is if we can kind of airlift a 5-star hotel into the middle of the arena.
I mean, look, if it's 4.5, I'll slum it, right?
These group CTOs, it's a glamorous lifestyle you lead. So, Sanjay, what's ahead for our lovely listener on this episode, the interview? What's been going on there?
So we've got Simon who's worked for some really big businesses, and he's all about data, and we're going to have a conversation around. We're going to have a conversation about AI and the journey of getting there. And I think for me, this is really pertinent. I'm going on a data journey myself in my day job. So I think it's going to be a really good conversation. I think the people listening will really enjoy it.
Excellent. All right, that's obviously Sanjay's fireside chat. Highlight each episode of the podcast. We conclude as always with a spotlight on a local tech centre. Quite an interesting, quite one you wouldn't have expected. I wanted to cover the Netherlands, and there's a tech centre that came up there, and we get that covered by Martin. So I'll leave that one. Leave the audience in suspense until the end on that. But first, of course, what everybody is looking forward to in bated breath. It's our quiz.
You really, really need to get out more.
So here we have it, the latest edition of You Really Need to Get Out More. And Sanjay, I was complaining a little bit this afternoon, end of a long week, feeling a little sniffly, a little bit upset with myself and the world around me. And then I heard about Bob, because Bob Bernard and Jonathan Spooner, who very kindly joined us for the latest exciting edition of this CTO Academy quiz. I think it's the only tech leaders quiz in the world, but it's certainly the best one. And when I was kind of thinking to myself, what a difficult week I've had, Bob sent me a couple of pictures. Bob, welcome, based up in Calgary, and Jonathan down in Carlsbad, San Diego. Bob, though, tell me very briefly some of the challenges that you've had recently in your local area.
You bet you, Andrew. First of all, thank you for having me. Very excited to be on your show. I work for an organization called Berkshire Hathaway Energy. We reside in Alberta, Canada. We've experienced, I would say, the worst wildfire season in our organization's history. And as if that wasn't bad enough, we've actually gone from probably the worst wildfires to the worst floods in the same area, and then to some of the heaviest snowfall of the entire year. So restoration activities have been slowed dramatically. We've lost over 300 structures, which is a lot. And so it's been a challenging year to say the least. But at the end of the day, our work crews and our contractors have worked night and day tirelessly and very safely. I hope I'm not testing fate here, but to this date, there has been 0 injuries, which is astonishing. So,
and over what period of time, Bob, have these 3 major events taken place?
Yeah, so the different environmental effects occurred over a 10 to 12 day period. So from terrible wildfires to incredible floods, and when I say floods, I mean rivers. And so, and then from there to some of our heaviest snowfalls of the year measured in feet. So it's been an incredible year, honestly.
Extraordinary. So you've come to us for a little light relief, Bob, of the CTO Academy quiz.
I don't know. I hear Jonathan is quite the opponent. Perhaps I should have brought my boxing gloves with me. I don't know.
Well, they've had their own wildfires down there as well, of course. So it's extraordinary stuff. Bob, tell us a little bit about yourself and about what you're doing, and maybe as we like to explore. I know the audience loves this element of this conversation. Maybe any challenges other than the weather challenges that you're facing at the moment.
Sure, Andrew, happy to. So as mentioned earlier, I work for Berkshire Hathaway Energy. We are an electric transmission company. In our organization, we have close to 800 staff, but we're part of a broader portfolio of electric utilities spread across the U.S. and the UK. And I would say what's challenging us at the moment, aside from wildfires, would be we're engaged in a digital transformation. And in our organization, that means we're bringing in new technologies. We're sunsetting some older technologies, but we're becoming more integrated in the back end, not only from a technology perspective, but also from a cultural perspective as well, which brings with it its own set of challenges. But it's always fun, lots of good work going on, meeting lots of interesting people from around the globe. So it's very, very exciting times, Andrew.
Sounds amazing. I've got a quick question, right? Yeah. So I'm going to link your transformation to the wildfires. So I've done lots of transformation projects, and they are always very stressful. And I think you get two levels of stress. You get the technology side, which is always challenging. But I think you mentioned it. It's the people side, getting people over the fact that you're going to sunset technology that they may have used for many, many years. If you couple that with the kind of environmental events that you've had, how are you kind of managing the people in terms of kind of their happiness and stability and, being still being able to deliver, the projects, that it's quite an interesting feat, really.
Yeah, good question, Sanjay. And I think, at the end of the day, we have an obligation to our ratepayers to keep the lights on. And so when we have a significant event such as what we're going through, it is literally an all hands on deck, and everything else in our organization effectively stops, right? So all activities go towards managing and supporting our field operations teams. And I think here's a great example of that, Sanjay. So on a normal day-to-day operations, we lose a structure here and there now and again. But when you lose 200, 300 structures, the field operations team will ask us, can you do this? Can you do that within 24 hours? We need this right away, whatever it may be. And so we have to be mindful of the fact that we're ISO 27001 and 27019 certified. And so no matter what we do from a compliance and regulatory perspective, we always have to do things the right way. And so our support teams come together. We manage what we need to manage very, very quickly, but we do so in a way that's sustainable and enables our field operations teams to get the lights on as quickly as possible.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. I think that togetherness is so important. So thank you for that.
Great stuff, Bob. Thank you very much.
You
for
betcha.
That. Jonathan, on the coast just above San Diego, I think. Tell us a little bit about you, and thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Jonathan Spooner. I'm the CTO of Loyal. We're a mobile acquisition company. We're basically rolling up a whole bunch of mobile apps and being a publisher. Our group has previous, expertise in mobile, where we ran a location-based advertising network. So we actually had, over 300 million devices and managed the location and advertising based off of that. And we all left that company several years ago, and several of us came back together and said, hey, let's stay in apps, but let's just buy them and be the publisher this time instead of being the middleman. So we've been doing this for a while, and we've been developing our own little growth platform. So, we can manage subscriptions and the user base and messaging and obviously advertising, to roll it up and allow us to be able to manage a whole bunch of apps in one platform.
Really interesting. So I tell you what's interesting, because I've just done this as well, where I've moved from one part of the value chain to another part of the value chain. So I did that about a year ago. And I found the kind of mental transition really challenging, because your side of the value chain, right? And when you jump over the fence, it all looks really familiar, but then a little bit different. So yeah, how are you finding that?
It's great. Before we were between the publisher and the advertiser and this middleman, and the business model really fed each other, So it was always a challenge keeping that going consistently. And we've always kind of looked over and like, oh, the publishers have it all, So it's been really fun. There's been some challenges, that we've had to learn, paid advertising and things like that, stuff we didn't traditionally do. We've been able to get into that, but knowing the tech and how it all works and how data flows has been a big advantage for our team. So.
Yeah, definitely. More insightful, right? So it sounds great.
Great stuff. Thanks, Sanjay.
And
Jonathan.
We have not had any hardships like Bob down here in Carlsbad for many years. We had big fires years ago, but if this is the competition, it was give Bob a point, because he's definitely taken it
very,
already.
very sporting of you, Jonathan, but I know you're going to be fighting for every dollar, every one of the $50 that CTO Academy offers, which leads me on, of course. Now, just a quick thing. I can't see Bob. I'm hoping that producer James will sort this out. But just in case the viewers are also suffering what I'm suffering, then Bob, we can't see you directly on screen at the moment. So this might be a challenge for the hand in the air CTO Academy high-tech quiz process, but this is how it works. Have you got a couple of nominated restaurants, Bob and Jonathan, that you will be taking your $50 of CTO Academy's hard-earned money as your winnings? Where will you be going, Bob?
I'll be taking my family to a restaurant called The Keg. It's a local restaurant. There's many of them are around town, but they do a really good job. So looking forward to it.
Lovely. Look at that. That's great. Jonathan?
Let's keep it simple. We're going to do Pizza Port. We've got 4 kids. It's the place I met my wife, so it'll be a good outing.
Well, that's a great choice. Our inaugural winner, Steve Van Niekerk in Johannesburg, episode 1, took a huge family group to his local pizzeria, so that's a very popular selection. Right, guys, so we've got 3 questions. First one to 2. We'll take away for $50. Bob, purely on an alphabetical basis, but I'm going to ask you to select 1 to 3. Which one will you go for first?
Let's go to the middle. Let's go for number 2.
Go for number 2. Excellent. Good luck, chaps. Here we go. Bob, because I can't see you on screen, technical issue I'm having here, do call out your name, please, if you think they know the answer. First one wins. Here we go. What delicious computer term did web browser programmer Lou Mantuli coin to refer to information sent from browser to web server? And delicious computer term is a key clue.
Yes.
No, the clock's ticking here, guys. I'm going to have to call it out. The audience is waiting with bated breath. Anybody? No? It's cookie. It's the cookie.
Oh, cookie.
Of course it is.
Even I, as a non-techie, thought I might have got that one if I'd been given that question. All right. Jonathan, 1 or 3? It's a nail-biting 0-0 at the moment.
All right, 1.
Go for 1. All right, my favourite, which is Who Am I? I think this is relatively straightforward, but let's see how you get on. Okay, born October 1967, German-American entrepreneur and VC. He was the first outside investor in Facebook. The online payments company that he founded in 1996 was sold to eBay in 2002 for $1.5 billion. Who am I? Tell you what, this is going to be a tense, nail-biting final question, I think.
Yeah.
Anybody? No? The audience is screaming.
Don't have that one.
Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel is the man. Sanjay's nodding. Yeah. I think Sanjay would have walked away with $50 on this one. Right. Final question, guys. And by the way, we do split the winnings. Even if you come out with 0-0, we are not hardcore. We do allow you to come away with a prize. Okay, let's go. Excuse my occasional sniffles here, as I'm suffering from a bit of a summer cold. Right. Final question. Think was the company motto for more than 40 years, but the company often referred to as Big Blue. What is this frequently acronymed company called?
Bob.
Go, Bob.
IBM.
We have a winner. Excellent, Bob. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jonathan. I'm sorry it didn't come out this time, but the $50. And I think, in fairness to Bob and the travails that he's had to suffer, he's a worthy winner, I think, of the $50. Great to see you guys.
So
Thank you
fun.
again very
Thank
much
you.
for participating.
Thank you so much, guys.
So there we have it, Sanjay. I mean, I'm always incredibly impressed and very, very pleased to see so many people kind of volunteer and put their head above the parapet for these quizzes. But it obviously is more difficult than sometimes I think it is. I mean, how did you get on with those 3?
So I got the second and the third one. So Peter Thiel and IBM, but I think it's nerve wracking. So the first one, a cookie, it's so obvious, and I knew it. I knew the link was there, but I just couldn't get it. So yeah.
Well, obviously for Paul Bobby, I mean, he's got slightly larger challenges than having to get the podcast quiz right, but he came out winning, and thank you to both. Thank you to Jonathan as well. So listen, this is purely a link through to the highlight of the show as far as I'm concerned, but Sanjay's fireside chat.
Hi, Simon. Thanks for joining me. Really appreciate you taking the time out. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation because two reasons. I think AI, ChatGPT, everyone's talking about AI, right? I mean, we have lots of very non-techies getting very excited about it, because rightfully with what's going on in the space. But then also personally, I'm going on a machine learning, AI, data journey in my day job. So I think this is a very well-timed conversation. Where I would like to start on this is kind of throwing it into the deep end, right? So I have a load of data in my business, and I'm sure most people are like that. There are a ton of tools out there now that are easily available and are very, very powerful. So my stupid question is, do I just connect the two and away I go? Does that solve my problem?
No, absolutely not. It's the equivalent really of, if you're not careful, building on sand. So I think the fundamental starting point is to make sure that your data you're putting in is fit for purpose. It's clean, it's accurate, it aligns to whatever you want to use that data for, so it ties into your business strategy. And you can be sure you can trust that data. So it's got those rigorous controls and strict standards of, even things like spellings and things like that. There are some of the real simple foundational things that people forget. In my past, one of my roles at a large sports retailer, we used to buy football boots, and there was a product in that department that wasn't a football boot, it was the biggest selling product. And you can imagine the confusion that caused when people look at a department sales versus a sum of product sales once they get classified. So you get a different perspective. And I'm full of examples like that of things that I've dealt with in the past. Getting those controls and alerts to make sure things are accurately and properly and consistently classified is real key. You've probably heard of things like IBM's ladder to AI. A lot of that starts at that foundational level, making sure that information you're putting in is right.
So really, garbage in, garbage out is kind of what you're saying,
that's the
right?
polite version.
I'm not very careful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you give a good example about the football boots, right? So if that is not cleansed as the data goes in, or some subsequent process, whatever spits out at the end of, you mentioned the ladder or the process that we're going to talk through, I guess you just get false results, right? Which is going to get people either very upset or very excited for the wrong reason. What's the best way of cleaning the data? Because I've had scenarios in the past where I've gone on a data journey, and there's a lot of argument between say engineers who are creating the production environment and they're just lobbing stuff in. And then I've got data engineers going, there's just a load of crap in here and it's not my job to fix the crap. Like what's the balance? Who does that, I guess?
You've got to have the balance between the people with the technical ability to cleanse the data, so the engineers, but also those domain experts. So you ask a data engineer to classify a load of clothing, he'll just call them all T-shirts and not understand the nuances between them, because it's not his or her background. You need that collaborative approach to bring the domain expertise into that process. And they should be the people that audit it and test it and make sure it's proper, got the real integrity that it needs to have. And that's on top of all the sort of controls around sort of data that can be missing or purposely misleading for any particular reason. Somebody might be incentivized on a certain particular category performance, and there could be some cheating going off, if you like. We've got to have things that pick out and alert attention to those issues.
Okay, so two takeaways there for me are, one, this is not an engineering thing. Mm-hmm. This solely, when we're talking about the data and this foundation that we're trying to build, bringing in people from within the business that have domain knowledge is actually really critical from the way you're saying it.
Yeah.
And then, the cheating. Never thought about that, actually. Never thought. But it's a fair point, right? So, and I know your background is in retail. So some form of real life validation to make sure there's no, again, garbage going in, which may mislead.
Absolutely.
Okay. So super useful. So I'm going to ask the question again, right? With a little twist. So I've got a production environment. I have created a warehouse because that's probably a sensible thing to do. And I've cleansed my data. So now I've got clean data, whatever clean data means. I've got a warehouse. I've got AI tools. Now can I connect the two and get some results?
Of course you can, but you'd be wrong.
Okay, of course I'm wrong.
You'd be taking a massive risk.
Okay.
And the first thing you need to understand really is what are the questions or the type of questions that you're trying to answer. Obviously, you can't foresee all of those questions, but they tend to be along a theme and so, again, link back to your business strategy. So that data needs to be useful for the purposes of either adding value in whatever way, increasing revenue, decreasing cost, bringing in new revenue streams, all of those things. So you need to understand what those elements are that drive your business success. And then what's the data that supports that? And is that available? And is it really cleansed? I keep coming back to that, and I'm going to.
Sounds like you've been through some pain here, Simon.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So again, if you're saying the next step in my journey is to understand the questions, that again sounds like it's not an engineering task. It sounds like engagement from within the business.
Correct. Yeah.
To kind of help come up with the questions I'm going to ask of the data, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
How? So I've now got a bit of anxiety, right? So what's the process of that? Because that doesn't sound like it will be clean. It sounds like it's going to be iterative. And the other bit that just gave me anxiety there was we're going to start asking questions, and you said it yourself. The data is not going to be there, or it's not going to be right, or it's going to be. We're going to have discovered that it's missing. Can you just walk me and us through that process? Because that sounds painful, actually.
If we took a typical business requirement, and that is to understand a single customer view. So you want to bring lots of different aspects of what a customer's been through. Let's say it's an e-commerce retailer. You want to understand what's triggered them to come to your site for a start, what other sites they've looked at, who your competitors are, what pages they've looked at, how many times, what devices. All these data points are in different places, in different systems, and not easy to analyze unless you've got a lot of that data transformation already in place. And you're not going to put that data transformation in place until you know what you need out. And you only know what you need out by talking to the business. So you've got to have that cross-functional team that know what needs to be delivered and keep close to it. So your techies understand the business to a very high level. And that takes time. That takes effort and domain knowledge again. A bit like we said with the data foundation. This next part of that needs to understand almost to the point of what they're going to do with that data once they get it.
Yeah. And it sounds like that's going to be an iterative process, right?
Absolutely,
because
yeah.
I can imagine, I'm just trying to think of my current business at the moment and previous businesses where, we would have cleansed data, we would have then started asking questions, and we would have gone, actually, I think you mentioned it again. No, I need data from a different location. I've got to go back to the beginning to pull data from another location before I can actually start answering these important questions.
Yes.
Is that normal? Is that typical? Because again, if I was going through that in a business, I'd start getting anxiety, and I'm sure I'd get it in the neck from somebody. But I guess that's the right thing to do.
It's absolutely normal. The whole world of analytics is iterative. So the answer to your first question spawns 3-4 more questions in more detail, and then you say, well, what if, and well, what happens if we do this, and all those things need further exploration, and then so on and so on. It continues until you gain that sort of understanding of the normal behaviours and the patterns.
Okay, useful, interesting. I'm gonna just pick on another point that you made. So during this process of figuring out the questions, checking that we've got the data, going through the whole cleansing process and kind of refining it. Because I guess you're going to refine the questions as you do some of that as well, right? Yeah. And you may need to check. I assume you're going to change some of the questions because you're going to realize you don't have some of the data as well, right?
Of course, yeah.
And you mentioned domain knowledge, right? So imagine I'm in a situation where it's really difficult to get the domain knowledge into the engineers because, my category managers or the business owners of that area of my organization, it could be really specialist, right? Does the domain knowledge need to transfer to engineers, or do you just work hand in hand with domain experts? What's in an ideal world? How do you get the best out of the data? Because I look at it and go, actually, if I could get domain knowledge into my engineers, we're flying, because they know the underpinning of the data now. They understand the business, which is a win anyway.
Yeah.
And we can be left alone, right? Kind of, which is what I'm always looking for. But I don't know if that kind of makes sense in the world that you're talking about. So, yeah.
So what I've always done in the past is create the analyst role that lives in a foot in both camps. So they can speak the language to the engineers and they can speak the business language, and they become the glue that holds the two things together. They can do both roles to a certain extent. Are they product experts? No. Are they pure technical? No. But they're good enough to bring the whole thing together and get you results that you need. And that combination is one that I've used very successfully in large organizations before.
Okay, useful. So bridge the gap.
Correct.
Don't think the gap will naturally bridge. Yeah. I guess in a my world typically has always been smaller businesses, so startup and then scale up, and I guess sometimes the CTO or technical leader will have to play that role. But I guess interestingly, if you can bring in an analyst or a product manager or somebody, maybe a team lead, that again can just maybe bridge the gap. I guess you get the benefits of it all, because again, I'm just trying to think, business owners have got a day job, engineers, or even if they're data engineers, are going to still have a day job. So okay, so the bridging the gap is useful and important. Okay, so I'm gonna move on. You're going to get bored of the same question, but you've kind of changed my mind a little bit. So I've got my data, I've got a foundation, I've cleansed it. I know the questions that are important to the business, and maybe I've rank ordered them because they've said I've got 50 questions. And I've gone, I don't have that much resource. Standard problems, right? So got data. I've got my questions. I think I've cleansed my data well enough. I've got AI tools. I'm now saying this out loud. Do I even need AI? Am I everyone's saying I need AI, but actually, if I've spent this much time in the data, I've probably already started asking questions to start validating my question, like the questions that are being asked of me. And me as a human, or my teams as kind of just members of the team, are probably not even using AI tools. They're probably using kind of data analyst tools. So I don't get it. So do I need AI? But what's the balance? And when can I just ask simple questions and get simple reports? And when does AI really come into this?
Yeah, I mean, you've got there are various models that I'll just sort of quote, and people can research after this if they like. But
thank you.
There's
we'll put anything that you say in the notes of the podcast as well.
Sure. Yeah. Well, there's a couple that I just wanted to mention to sort of set the scene, really. There is a DIKW pyramid, and that starts at the bottom with data at the bottom. And then as you move up that pyramid, that data becomes information. So it's now not just a series of interconnected facts and figures. It's now starting to form a pattern of data. And then that becomes knowledge as you sort of enrich it further and aggregate it and shape it as to what you need. And ultimately, that becomes wisdom. And wisdom allows you to use it for predictive purposes. So that's one to sort of read into more. And there's a very similar model from Gartner called the Gartner Analytics Maturity Model. And that starts with the simplest form of analytics, really, is just reporting facts. Things you might have traditionally done on a spreadsheet or Power BI as any BI tool. And that's reporting what's called descriptive, so pure facts and figures, tabular data, charts, trends, that kind of thing. And then you've got moving through into more complex is the diagnostic, and then on to predictive technologies, where you're looking at, well, this will happen before it happens, and then prescriptive at the upper end of that scale, which is sort of getting you into the world of AI. So it's the artificial intelligence where it's deciding what to do. But obviously they're on a graduated series of complexity and depend on each other ultimately.
So AI is important.
Yeah.
But I've got to go on the journey, and I'm going to be reporting on my data along the way. So as I go up the pyramid or go up the kind of ladder that you mentioned, the Gartner ladder. And really, I guess what you're saying is my job as a technical leader, as a CTO, is not get so excited and hung up about AI.
Yeah.
It's kind of bring it back to the business, bring it back to what we're trying to answer, that doesn't mean we shouldn't be using AI if it's relevant. I guess machine learning and AI and all the other tools that are out there. But remember to focus on delivering for the business. I like that. That is kind of more my world. I think I get when people start using buzzword bingo, it kind of stresses me out because
Absolutely.
I think I'm just a bit too old now.
I like the example of visual recognition of pictures, and one of the most fun ones I ever saw was a machine learning model that had been trained to recognise different dog breeds, and I sort of went on this training course for this, and it was real good. And you thought, oh, this is great, how it works. And you're teaching it, but you're training the model as you go. You're showing it different dog breeds, and then it starts to get a certainty score as it narrows down the characteristics of each breed. And a lot of it's on the facial side, because there's not that much sort of features that it can go off on the rest of the dog, really. And we got to the end of this, and we trained these models of over thousands and thousands, and we were getting really good recognitions of the breeds. And it then, right at the end, you fed it a picture of a dachshund, and it says, "Yep, 99% Doberman." And there you go. There's the one very funny example that as much work as you do training it, there's always you don't know what you've not put in. You've got to give it enough for it to get the right answers.
And I think that's the key, right? So I think for me, AI is important, and I think it's going to continue to be important as we evolve. And I can see over the next 3-4 years the power of the tools. I quickly mentioned ChatGPT, and I've been using it recently for just some personal things and a few other bits and pieces I'm doing. So nothing in production, and it's super clever. But on the flip side, and especially after this conversation, I'm like, some of the real benefits that my business can get out of our data, I definitely don't need AI. But I definitely need to cleanse that data, because again, your example of the dog, I don't need to do that in AI with some of my data, but I do need some from the business to kind of support me cleaning it, because I can add a load of benefit, to our bottom line if I go through the process. So I think that's been really useful. I've got one more question for you, Simon, before I let you go on this very, very hot day, and you can turn your fans back on. I kind of try to always round these conversations off by asking asking the guests for one bit of advice, right? So you've laid out a really nice journey for us, right? I think so. I really, really appreciate that. You've shared a couple of frameworks, and we'll post these in the podcast notes, so people can kind of dive into it and read a little bit more. And thank you for that. I think, the real one big question for hopefully our listeners is, where do I start getting some tangible benefits? Because really, if I boil it down, that's what I'm asked to do within the business. I'm kind of just asked, we're sitting on a load of data. People are banging on about AI. Give me something, give me some results, right? So how do I start making this tangible quickly for my organization?
Sure, yeah. The first thing you need to do is to create yourself an outline plan for the long term. So where do you want to get to? And just sketch that out. Don't spend too long on it. Just keep yourself going along that journey. And then start to pick out the small projects. So start small. Small projects that travel you along that journey. Because there will be parts of your business today where your data is good enough. You can start today with certain bits. You don't have to get all of your data perfect. You just need to know that I'm only going to use perfect bits of that data. And then you're going to get the value quicker. And then you're going to free time up. And that's the next thing, is those projects need to generate the value added that free up either the time or generate the revenues to fund the next evolution. So little things like chatbots, quite easy to develop, quite easy to train to a certain point. And there's many millions of organizations that are using chatbots successfully, and it's not hard to get started. Things like Node-RED. I once challenged a salesperson in tech to create a chatbot, and he did it in a few days. So yeah, it was, but it started, and it also was multilingual as well. So it was very impressive. And that was using a tool called Node-RED. So that's quite good. So yeah, little things like that. You then get that, you start that ball rolling with something interesting, and get a people first approach to it, not a technology first. So get ideas to come from a team that's cross-functional, that can sort of motivate and support each other. And getting somebody from a sales discipline, for example, to create a chatbot is like, oh, fantastic, excellent, great work. And then that gives someone else in a different department an even bigger idea. So it's about creating that sort of positive snowball, as I like to call it, that gets people motivated and excited, but also give people that bit of time to develop these little solutions and innovations. I used to try to get everybody in my team to get their day job done in 4 days a week. And on the 5th day, which was a Thursday, just so they didn't relax on a Friday. So on the Thursday, we used to get everyone together, talk about the challenges in the business, talk about things that are going well, talk about things that are not, and then have a deep dive into one of the people who's in the room's current challenges and get everybody to sort of contribute. And it's that unstructured approach to it that helps deliver most of the benefit, because you get some real interesting, different perspectives from everybody that real bounce off each other. And I got people working with, from the property department, helping with e-commerce, which is a completely different world. And they both learned from each other, which was really interesting and fascinating to see.
I think that, that's a really interesting takeaway, right? So go small, let it snowball. You used a really interesting phrase, which I use quite a bit, which is good enough. And I really like that. Yeah. And I'm really glad you've said that, because sometimes we don't need perfection. We need good enough so we can get some wins, and the wins kind of then help get the next thing, which hopefully is bigger, or, hopefully definitely impacting the business. So yeah, I think that's really good advice.
80-20 rule, isn't it? Probably more 95-5. It's the same concept.
That is brilliant, Simon. Look, thank you very much for the conversation. Thank you for allowing me to be very dumb as we've walked through this journey. And I think you've given me some very good advice. I think hopefully you've given the listeners lots of really good advice on how to go on this journey. I really love how you advise people how to start. So thank you very much. And hopefully we'll speak soon.
Thank you, Sanjay.
So, Sanjay, what you probably don't realise is as you're recording this chat, I'm kind of lying back on my recliner with a cocktail in my hand and just putting my feet up and enjoying the content. But what did you take from that? What were your 2 or 3 key learnings?
So I think, like I said earlier, I think for me, this was really interesting because I'm going through the journey myself. the really interesting thing that Simon spoke about for me was just building that foundation. So not building on sand. And I think sometimes as a CTO or just, another person within a business, you're so eager just to crack on or use technology or, want to play with AI and some machine learning. And we forget to kind of think about the data and kind of making sure it's clean and making sure we're not building on sand. So I think it was really nice to hear that from Simon because, that's what he does all day, every day. So I think that was really good. I think that the other thing that I don't think I've ever really considered was go in and understand the questions that you want to ask, right? So, and be clear on what you're trying to get out of it. So you can then make sure that part of your data platform is in a good place. And, you can slice into this rather than having to clean all your data in one go. So I think there's a kind of, a lesson there. Like you can hit it quite quickly if you narrow it down, but you've got to do some of the upfront thinking. So for me, there were two really big takeaways that definitely, I'm going to be using. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Sanjay. Well, beautifully handled as always. And I'm going to volunteer myself to be a guest on one of these shows. I'd like to be on the other end of your Q&A process. You never know. You never know what luck the audience
You never know.
So listen, have you ever heard of Delft?
No, I have not.
That's not the fourth question on the quiz, but it is. The headline is the Tech Centre on Around the Tech World in 80 seconds. So I'm going to leave Martin to tell us more about Delft. Okay, and here we are again. Welcome to Around the Tech World in 80 seconds. And I'm going to just do a little build up to this one because for historic reasons, I have a real deep affection for the Netherlands. It started when I was traveling on my first ever Interrail trip from the UK. I had my little Interrail ticket. The first destination was Amsterdam Dam Station. I got there. I went on the train, got out of Dam Station. I was very excited about this exotic new country, and everyone spoke the most beautiful English I'd ever heard. Coming from Cornwall, it was even better than some of the people I knew in Cornwall. So immediately I fell in love with the Netherlands, and since then I've built up a lot of great friendships, and I've been many times. And one of the areas of, and so therefore when I was thinking about recording this session in the Netherlands, the obvious places to go would have been Amsterdam, perhaps Rotterdam and The Hague. And my guest today, Martin de Boer, came up with a brilliant suggestion of Delft. Martin, welcome to the podcast, to this section. It's great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
It's lovely to see you. For those who are not familiar, who are perhaps now scrabbling on Google to see exactly where Delft is, it's tucked in between The Hague and Rotterdam. Beautiful city, very historic. I think, was it Vermeer was born and died in Delft?
Yes, it is. It's one of the big painters of the Netherlands.
One of the big painters. And I think it was also the royal, it was at some stage, it was the royal house of the House of Orange, wasn't it? The season.
No, actually, the Dutch government's located in The Hague, but because it hasn't had any city walls, Delft was actually the protected city where the royal family was going to if there is a war.
Okay. Brilliant. Well, listen, that's the history, and it's a beautiful city, so please have a look at it and visit it whenever you're in the Netherlands. But we're here, of course, to talk about tech and to talk about why Delft is particularly hot as a tech scene. Martin, quick introduction about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Martin. I work as an enterprise architect at Consumentenbond, and this is a consumer organization, so it's a bit similar to Which in the UK. So that's my introduction.
Okay, nice. All right. Well, listen, we're gonna hit. I think producer James is about to put the timer on the screen. Martin, are you ready? Are you prepared to
absolutely
do your best? Right. We're gonna, I think, get going around the tech world in 80 seconds, starting now. All about Delft. So, what's so great about the Delft tech scene, Martin?
All right. So, what's very nice about the Delft tech scene is because it's a university city, we have a lot of students, loads of talents. And it's a very, very nice place to be. People are working on tech, on aviation, on all kind of things. And it is also a lovely startup scene. So I've looked up some startups that are especially nice. So I found Envision, which has some kind of a Google Class solution, but then for people who can't see, so they translate everything into speech. A startup called Elemental Water Makers, and they make clean water out of seawater, so North Sea, and then using solar systems. So that's very nice. They have also got a lot of really hardcore engineers. So they have this startup called Vibes Technology, and they do dynamic analysis for sound and vibration. So this is more like the aviation scene. But also very cool smart city ideas, like a startup called Coding the Curbs, as a reservation system for logistics, like smart parking zones.
Martin, you delivered it beautifully. You've left me completely out of it, and I think the audience will be happy with that. So listen, we've gone over, but give us 5 words that capture Delft and why people should be going there, visiting it, investing in it. 5 words on Delft.
So I have 3 words: talent, it's intimate, and it's bustling.
Brilliant. I tell you what, those Dutchies, they're always contrarians. That's my experience of the Dutch. They always do it slightly differently. Martin de Boer, thank you for joining us. Thank you for telling us about Delft. Really cool. So there you have it. Now, Sanjay, you're probably too young to remember this song, but there was a classic from the 80s by Lisa Stansfield called All Around the World. Do you remember that track?
No, I was in nappies. I'm only like in my early 20s, mate. I just love this band.
Well, I hope producer James is going to play a little in the background. But All Around the World is essentially what we give our lovely audience. So we've had Medellin, Manchester, Cape Town, Sao Paulo, Delft, and there'll be another one for episode 6. So you can't feel shortchanged with this podcast in any way at all. This is episode 5, our final episode. Sanjay, can you believe it? Season 1 is going to be the next one. And we've got a few surprises for you, dear listener. We're going to change the format up a little bit and give you a few shocks and surprises. So please tune into that. Sanjay, as always, a great pleasure to co-host with you.
It's been a pleasure, like always.
Thank you for listening, and hope to see you on episode 6. You have been listening to Me, My CTO and I, a CTO Academy production. With special thanks to guests Sanjay Mistry, Simon Harrison, Bob Bernard, Jonathan Spooner, and Martin de Boer. Dank je en tot ziens.